Hey, yo, I like some stuff in the year 2021, and now I will tell you about some of it. This was a pretty dry year for content, especially for me, since I've been a bit busy. I just recently got my PS5, haven't played that many games on it. For the little I did play of new games that released this year, I still felt a lot of the same boredom that I talked about last year. I haven't finished RE Village, because I beat, like, the first two dungeons, was not feeling really jazzed to continue playing it, was pretty bored of it. Um, Deathloop was a nice pastime, but not necessarily very memorable in the long run for me, and so on. There are also several things I've been told by people that I generally trust are good and worth checking out, but I haven't gotten around to them yet. Such as It Takes Two, Pig, with Nicolas Cage, and Metroid Dread. I didn't play that, and some indie games I forget the names of. I can't remember if I was told by Taylor J. Williams that The Green Knight was good or bad, so that's like a maybe. It's on my fucking to-do list. For content, like, social media content that I remember from this year that I really liked, probably only includes some of the Dear Evan Hansen reviews I watched. My favorite video essay I saw this year was the review of Dear Evan Hansen from Jenny Nicholson, which I will link below, and probably Shay Frillis's video was incredibly entertaining as well. Other than that, I really enjoyed and appreciated Ben Saint's Sonichu 102 Advanced Christery lecture video, even if it did age extremely poorly the millisecond that it was uploaded. That's pretty much it as far as I remember for great internet content from that year that I still go back to. Let's move on to commercial media now. In no particular order, this is what I loved and had nice things to say about this year that I consumed. Full spoilers ahead, by the way. Mitchells vs. the Machines is a good movie, and I have very little to add on to what I already said in my review of it several months ago. I love Katie, she's a great protagonist. I have basically no issues with the presentation of the family conflict like I usually do in most media, where some emotional beats feel like forced or overly tropey, or just kind of annoying and time-wasting. I think the conflict in this movie is solved in saccharine and unrealistic ways, but nothing bothered me while watching it. Some parts are just a bit less engaging than other parts, especially during the middle of the adventure. I can't help but wish the climax went a little harder in the cheesy corniness. Just go fucking balls out like the climax of Shrek 2. I can't help but wish that the genuinely uncomfortable portrayal of the family dynamic that was in the beginning was maintained a little bit more as the conflict was getting resolved. I can't help but feel that I wish the overall adventure had a few more components to it, but overall, great movie. It's a visual feast the whole way through. Between this and Encanto and Arcane, 3D animation was really a treat for the senses that year, in 2021. So yeah, I watched Encanto. It was really good. I liked it a lot. My only opinion on this movie that might be controversial is that Mirabelle is extremely sexy, and after I watched the movie, I looked it up on Google, and it says that she's 15, and then I feel the same way as I did when Gurren Lagann first came out and everyone found out that Yoko is somehow 14. So yeah, Encanto is a good movie. Please forget everything you just heard. This movie is beautiful, the characters are all charming, the conflict is at least somewhat novel. Like, I think this movie has a more interesting commentary than, say, Inside Out or Coco or any of that shit. The editing is great, the motion, the energy, and the songs and the scenes is really infectious. Shafe compared one of the songs to Friend Like Me from Aladdin, I completely agree. The energy and passion for the project is really just gushing out of so much of this movie. The cultural influences, down to the nuances of the little facial expressions, the Colombian facial expressions and little dance movements, it's just to die for. It's great. My only real issues with this film would be in how the conflict is approached by the characters themselves. The familial connections, they feel slightly rushed and near the ending. I find it difficult to believe that Abuela would see the error in her ways in the way that she did, especially since that is, like, the entire problem in the plot. Multiple characters know throughout, like, the whole story, especially near the beginning, that there is an issue with the magic, but none of them except for Mirabelle seem to do anything about it. When Mirabelle talks to Luisa about it, Luisa tells her where she might investigate next, but I don't understand why Luisa can't investigate it herself. Why leave it to Mirabelle? Luisa has even more reason to try to fix the magic, so why doesn't she take action on her own? The super hearing girl is also really weird. Like, she probably knows everything in the plot all the time. She knows Bruno never left, but, like, she doesn't stop Mirabelle from finding Bruno in the middle of the movie, even though she does so earlier in the movie. She never tried to help Bruno this whole time for all the years that he's been missing, which I think is kind of fucked up on her part. I've seen a ton of people online say that she was looking out for him the whole time, but I had the opposite impression. I mean, I think that, like, not even talking to Bruno throughout that entire time and maintaining his current state of living is not healthy for him, and she should have done something. The hearing girl should know about these issues with the magic and the whole family, you know, so why doesn't she, like, do something about it? Passivity isn't helping, it's just getting... the problem is growing worse. It's just kind of very irresponsible on her part, in my opinion. Beyond that, Louisa tells about her problems, like, very, very quickly after a small amount of being questioned by Mirabelle. Like, the way that characters unload information feels a bit rushed. Like, Louisa just suddenly tells Mirabelle all of her problems. When Mirabelle goes to confront Isabella later in the movie, Isabella very quickly, like, has a shift in attitude, I guess, that we're supposed to perceive was not the case before, very, very quickly. But they're not big problems, and I would prefer doing that in, like, an expedient way, because rather than, like, wasting a lot of time and having the movie be significantly longer, because they do have to tackle a lot in this movie. The movie has low stakes in the first place, so none of these things are necessarily big problems. The plot is just about defending magic powers. It's not like they're going to die or anything if they lose their powers, so they're still functional human beings. The biggest threat comes from the characters' own warped perceptions of their lives and their values, so the movie is inherently about just characters exploring their own thoughts and feelings, which makes it kind of weird when the story, like, has dips into, like, little action moments and such that feel that other people have also said feel a little bit out of place. But mainly, and it really does just have too much to love. Every time you watch it, you get more out of it. There's lots of subtle but clearly intentional angles that the subject matter is handled with that adds depth to the conflicts, like some of the lines from Louisa's song that imply that she also, like, feels a sort of resentment towards her younger sisters and the rest of her family for placing tasks and burdens onto her without second thoughts or without self-reflection. The powers can all be taken in this metaphorical sense where Louisa is, like, the super strong one, but it also is implied that she's, like, her conflict relates to her being the eldest sister, where more expectations and family drama is placed upon her. And her power is like a metaphor for that we don't necessarily see a lot of, but it's implied, you know? And there's just tons of implied family history that isn't directly shoved in your face that we can assume based on certain lines, certain interactions, and logic to determine what would make sense. The characters don't do a ton, but they have great stage presence, and they get a lot of dense information while they are on screen. So you can really unpack them and get a good idea of how they are in your head. There's a reason why the entire Madrigal family have been memed to hell and back online since the movie exploded on Disney+. I love the memes, love the social commentaries, love the subtle way some history and family relationships are implied without being explicitly stated. Love the vibe, love the energy in the songs and the animation, love the animation that lets all the characters be really goofy and cartoonish. Encanto kicks so much ass. Squid Game is similar. Everyone loves Squid Game. I don't have much more to add to it that I didn't say in my original video, other than it still holds up months later. It's still a fun-ass show to watch. The ideas in a subtextual macro sense still work. It has a lot of angles that you can unpack from an economic commentary standpoint. Very few things can hold my interest and stay fun, even through, like, multiple viewings, even through a first viewing, honestly, these days, let alone multiple viewings. It just has good content and a good flow. It captures your attention. But like I said, all my other stuff is still true. The cop character, the stuff with the cop character is still painfully boring, should have been cut entirely from the show. The ending is still stupid and doesn't work super well, but most of the show, vast majority, still kicks ass. It's a very easy show to just flip on from time to time or watch with friends who haven't seen it yet. It's great. Arcane is the same way, but to a lesser extent. The satisfying moments are a bit less frequent than they are in Squid Game. The commentary is much less interesting. The various commentaries in Arcane are incredibly, like, mundane. They're just kind of tropey. It mainly holds its ground with awesome animation and action and such. This is a show that I pretty much love just as much as everyone else, but every time I come back to it, I have more complaints. But yeah, most of what I already said in my video still holds up. But that being said, I already got contention from people on that video. Even though I don't think I really need any more arguments to prove my points and positions on that front, compared to what people have counter-argued, so I'm not even going to bother with that one and try to explain my criticisms. Now, onto my top 2 things from this year, starting with Odd Taxi. Y'all fucking fools if you haven't watched no Odd Taxi yet. That's fucking cringe, bro. Everyone has talked this show up already, so I'll spend this time to talk about why I love the character of Otokawa so much. Otokawa, main boy of Odd Taxi, is again a nice autistic representation. Of course, every character in Odd Taxi has some of these qualities relative to other media, especially other anime, since the dialogue in Odd Taxi is very unique for multiple reasons. It's unique in that it's just good in the first place, which most anime do not have good dialogue, but the entire show has heavy influence from traditional manzai comedy routines. This should be obvious considering the 2 twin brothers in the show are voiced by a famous manzai comedy duo, and 2 of the other characters in the story are diegetically a manzai comedy duo. So most of the dialogue in Odd Taxi is scripted to follow a very different pace and timing from most shows. A lot of it is very flat and very deadpan, very fast with sharp cuts and interruptions from characters back and forth, then pauses for a manzai-style punchline or weird tangents the dialogue goes in like a gag routine in a manzai act. There's constant manzai comedy influence in every bit of the show and how people talk, and it gives it a ton of energy. And all the characters have excellent, engrossing dialogue as a result, since they aren't over-dramatized, and they talk about concepts in a very relatable way. They're just chatting and arguing about mundane shit. So all the characters have an interesting way of speaking from the get-go that makes it stand out way more from most other media, but Otokawa definitely seems like he's leaning more onto the autistic side. He's a jaded, middle-aged cab driver. He's grumpy and curt to his passengers and even his friends, but he's also very well-rounded. He has a ton of humanity to him, balancing between aspects of confidence and determination versus his anxiety and social ineptitude. He speaks in a very deadpan, logical fashion, even next to all the other characters who also speak in that manzai style. He's impossibly charming. He has an adorable design with his short, pudgy little walrus body and that deadpan bitch-ass look on his face all the time as he keeps scowling at everything. But also it just seems like he's grumpy all the time because even when he's not, he isn't proficient at expressing himself honestly. He has some embarrassment about being emotionally open with people, and he seems like he's embraced his natural flaws so that he doesn't need to consider them as weak points. Like, he's bad at conversations and accidentally offends people all the time. So instead of being embarrassed by those tendencies, he's embraced that and become more standoffish to anyone he might offend. I'm sorry. These are all very natural characteristics of older autistic people who never necessarily develop their social skills to get around their weak points in conversations. When they're teenagers, autistic people tend to feel embarrassment towards their social shortcomings and mistakes. But later in life, they tend to just express themselves however they please, and if anyone has a problem with it, that's on them. Fuck you kind of mentality. So yeah, that's kind of Otokawa's deal, and he's just cool. Like, everything that makes him cool makes him more cool, makes him more adorable. Since he feels like such an underdog in the physical sense and the social sense, and then everything that shows his vulnerabilities makes him more cool, because you know that he keeps proving himself to be a logical, badass Chad with balls of steel. The show is just the best. It has the only moment in any media this year that got tears to shed from my eyeballs in the beautiful surreal sequence in the final episode. It's just really great. Also, this show has the single best piece of media of anything I saw this year, and that is episode 4, Tanaka's Revolution, which I'll probably do a whole video on because it's fucking great. Now, Being a Dick is my current favorite video game, and as an ongoing series that's about halfway done right now, is also my current most anticipated new release in the near future. I can't praise it enough. It's snappy, it has great pacing, it's endlessly reconsumable with next to no dull segments and a lot of variability. The characters are all charming, and, like, it has an infectious energy and tone. I just get a big smile on my face when I'm playing through an episode. It has so many different appeals, all stacking on top of each other at the same time to create an intensely joyful experience. I keeled over from laughing too hard, or my face started to hurt from smiling too hard playing this game. The energy just overpowers you. Like, I showed some random scenes of this extremely raunchy, self-aware college humor frat bro game to my mom, who I sometimes show media to, and she couldn't help but having a big smile on her face watching these goofy himbo college bros bonding, tackling various goofy fraternity hijinks. Nothing beats playing through a new episode. It's engaging, and it just gets better and better. Like, episode 1 is much better retrospectively, but when I first played it, I wasn't sure if it was going to end up being anywhere near as good as it is, but it really improves in every sense after episode 1, and keeps improving after season 1, and makes it all feel much more natural. This game has the best set of best boys I've literally ever seen in any media. The waifus are good too, but I feel like you'd be very misled to go into this game with the intention of playing it as an adult dating sim. This is primarily a goofy himbo comedy and a relatively down-to-earth drama. Actual fucking research went into making this game's setting and world and the events that take place. The guy who makes this game bases a lot of his writing and comedy style off of Dan Harmon and Community. It's endlessly wholesome, heartwarming, smile-inducing, hilarious, and ironically, despite its extremely raunchy tone and content, I honestly feel it's like an adult version of Arcane, with adult humor and such. It's a bit more dramatic than Arcane. Like, some actually serious stuff does happen in Being a Dick. Like, a teacher gets harassed by students to the point that she resigns. There's drug addiction and abuse. There's homophobic violence, toxic family relationships, and gaslighting, and so on. But I still feel that it's largely like Arcane. That's what it reminds me of the most, because in my eyes, Arcane is a show with a lot of energy, comedy, camaraderie, fun little conflicts, joy, bonding, and it represents the beauty of youth. Arcane is a show about the joy of youth, how fast it goes by, being sure to cherish the youth that you have. It's about the funny hijinks and shenanigans and all the fun shit you get up to in the whirlwind of being young, and holding on to those memories even after you've transitioned into an adult, and looking back on them positively, valuing the youth that you had. It's a very interesting story in an overarching sense, because it is both a coming-of-age story, where the characters grow up and overcome their flaws and become better people as they turn into adults, but it's also a story where, as a grown-up, once you become an adult, you need to look back on the value of the innocent joy of youth that you have now outgrown. It's a transition from child to adult, and the positives that come from that, while also understanding the importance of the youth that you had, and living it to its fullest extent. This is exactly the vibe I get from Being a Dick, just like for self-aware college bros. It's definitely a coming-of-age story, but it's still a story about the joy of youth and just, like, fucking living your best life. You could just go take your classes, go back to your dorm room and study and, like, eat when you're hungry and do some hobbies here and there. Or you could get out there and make shit happen, man. You can take risks, do crazy, stupid shit for fun, fall in love, do everything you can with your youth. The game is extremely self-aware about its crudeness, but it isn't like a misogynistic game with creepy, incel-y views. It does also present an overarching truth to characters like, say, Derek, who are extremely crude and say offensive things and sometimes believe offensive things, because Derek embraces his youth. He accepts failure. He doesn't think that he's more correct than anyone else. He keeps living life loudly. You know, he isn't stuck in his ways. He's honestly a very reasonable person. He's not mean or vindictive. He's a great example of how you should be if you have an unpopular opinion or an unpopular, like, personality or lifestyle. He doesn't force anything on others. He opens his mind and listens to other people who think differently from him. But he's proud to be himself, and he will just keep being himself. He has fun, and he wants others to have fun too. He is the joy of youth. And that's what this game is all about. And that's about it. Yeah, those are the things that I can safely say I liked strongly from 2021. I was considering putting Honey Pop 2 on this list because I still think about the game with a sort of fondness. Like, what I feel, it feels like a positive emotion, but I think that's more because I really want to like it and I want it to somehow, like, be better than it is. But really, when I actually play it, it just isn't that fun. The writing is about a fucking 25 million times less compelling than the first game's was. Everything I said in my review still holds up and is accurate to my current thoughts on the game. There might be one or two content creator videos I'm forgetting about that were good in 2021, like maybe a Schaeferless ranking style video or something. I don't know, man. This is the stuff I can definitely say I think back on fondly and still enjoy consuming to this day that came out of this mostly forgettable year. I still have a couple PS5 games that came out in 2021 that I have yet to play, but yeah. So yeah. Summing things up, Being a Dick is Game of the Year. Odd Taxi is amazing. Can't wait for the future. It's looking bright. See ya.